वेलकम बैक डियर स्टूडेंट्स। आज हम पॉलिनेशन डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं। सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, डेफिनेशन ऑफ पॉलिनेशन आपको पता ही होगी। द मेल एंड फीमेल गेमेट्स इन केस ऑफ एंजियोस्पर्म्स दे आर हाउस्ड, दे आर प्रेजेंट इन डिफरेंट स्ट्रक्चर्स. Male gametes are present in anthers and female gametes are present in pistils. So you know that fertilization, it can occur only when these two gametes they are brought close together, and this occurs due to pollination. Now we have to discuss what is pollination. Pollination is simply defined as the transfer of pollen grains from the anther or microsporophyll to the stigma or megasporophyll of a flower. Here you can see these are the anthers producing pollen grains. The pollen grains, they get transferred from these anthers to the stigma of this flower. This event is known as pollination. Now there are different types of pollination. Broadly speaking, there are two types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination, which is also known as xenogamy. And self-pollination has further been divided into two types: autogamy and geitonogamy. Now what is autogamy? Autogamy means pollination occurs within the same flower. Geitonogamy means pollination occurs between two flowers, but these two flowers are present on the same plant. They are genetically similar. Now, this autogamy, it can occur by different methods. The first one is homogamy, then cleistogamy, and bud pollination. Okay. Now the next type is cross-pollination, xenogamy. It means the pollen grains, they are transferred from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower, but that flower is present on the separate plant. Okay, it is cross-pollination. Now cross-pollination, it occurs by both biotic as well as abiotic agents, because some agencies are required to transfer the pollen grains, and depending upon the biotic agents we have different types of cross-pollination. Okay, in abiotic category, if pollination is caused by wind, it is known as anemophily. If it is caused by water, it is named as hydrophily. And if it is caused by living organisms, then it has different types depending upon the living organism that causes pollination. If it is caused by snails, it is named as malacophily. If it is caused by insects, entomophily. If birds help in transfer of pollen grains, it is known as ornithophily. If bats assist in pollination, it is known as chiropterophily. And if other vertebrates help in pollination, it is named as zoophily. Okay, so zoophily has different types. If bats cause this pollination, it is known as chiropterophily. So simply stated, cross pollination can occur because of the existence of two agents. One is abiotic agent and the second one is biotic agent. Biotic agents में बहुत सारे organisms pollination कर सकते हैं. Accordingly, these pollinations are named differently. Now today we are specifically going to talk about self-pollination, and it is different types. So self-pollination, it means transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or genetically similar flower. It means या तो एक ही फ्लावर में हो जाएगी पॉलिनेशन, या दो फ्लावर्स के बीच में हो जाएगी, लेकिन वो दो फ्लावर्स एक ही प्लांट पे होने चाहिए. Self-pollination, it is possible in those flowers which are bisexual. That means they contain both male reproductive part, they contain the female reproductive part. Or it is possible in case of monoecious plants. Monoecious plants are those plants which contain two types of flowers, male flowers and female flowers. And it occurs when anthers and stigma mature simultaneously. तभी क्रॉस सेल्फ पॉलिनेशन हो जाएगी जब anthers and stigma they mature simultaneously. These are the three prerequisite conditions for self-pollination to occur. Now the types of self-pollination. The first one is autogamy, then we have geitonogamy. Autogamy, it simply means, looking at its literal meaning, it simply means self-marriage. That means transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of the same flower. यहाँ पे आप देख लीजिए, these are the anthers. Pollen grains are getting transferred from these anthers to the stigma, which is located on the same flower. The anthers and stigma, they lie very close to each other so that the pollen grains easily land on the stigma. Now the types of autogamy. How autogamy is effectuated, how autogamy occurs. It can occur as a result of different causes. Okay, the first one is homogamy. Homogamy, it is a way of causing self-pollination. And the meaning of homogamy is both the male and female reproductive parts, they mature simultaneously. इसका मतलब ये है, when pollen grains are mature, at the same time the stigma becomes receptive. And it happens in case of chasmogamous or open flowers. Chasmogamous flowers means those flowers which open, which do not remain closed. Okay, in those flowers, what happens is the anthers, they produce pollen grains, they become mature, and at the same time the stigma becomes receptive. The second condition is the anthers and stigmas of such chasmogamous flowers, they must be brought together by growth, bending or folding. They grow very close to each other, they bend upon each other, or they fold upon each other so that the pollen grain lands on its own stigma. Now the examples of plants which show homogamy include convolvulus, catharanthus, gardenia, lilac, okra, mirabilis, potato and sunflower. You have to just remember a few examples. Now calistogamy. Calistogamy, it is another way of causing self-pollination, or you can say autogamy. It is a type of autogamy in which the reproductive parts of flower, they remain closed or encircled with petals. They never open. Calistogamous flowers, they never open. When they do not open, they do not allow the other pollen grains coming from outside to pollinate to pollinate themselves. Okay, so the pollen grains which are produced inside, they pollinate the stigma. They get transferred to the stigma which is also present inside. अगर हम मीनिंग देखेंगे calistogamy की, it is a combination of two Greek words, calisto and gamy. Calisto means closed or hidden, and gamy means marriage or union. So calistogamy is hidden marriage. The pollination takes place while the flower is closed. And the examples of plants showing calistogamy is Commelina bengalensis, and viola. Now the third type of autogamy is bud pollination. In bud pollination, the pollination takes place when the flower is in the bud condition. These flowers open, but pollination has already taken place before the flower opens. It usually occurs in the flowers in which the stigma and the pollen grains, they mature or ripen even before opening. अभी फ्लावर ओपन नहीं हुआ होता है, उसके जो मेल एंड फीमेल रिप्रोडक्टिव पार्ट्स होते हैं, दे हैव बिकम मैच्योर. दैट मीन्स पॉलिनेशन पहले से ही हुई होती है, देन फ्लावर ओपन्स. एंड द एग्जाम्पल इज राइस, wheat, pea, jute, linseed, and there are many other examples. Now the second type is geitonogamy. We have discussed autogamy, now geitonogamy. The meaning of geitonogamy is, geiton means neighbor and gamos means marriage. Okay, it is a type of self-pollination, but this type of self-pollination, it occurs between two neighbors, two flowers present on the same plant. It is a transfer of pollen grains from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower, but these two flowers are present on the same plant. Here you can see flower A, flower B. Pollen grains get transferred from this flower to that flower and this flower to that flower, but these two flowers are present on the same plant, neighbors. It is genetically self-pollination. Genetically speaking, it is self-pollination because both these flowers are present on the same plant, but functionally talking, it is a cross-pollination, as pollen grain requires to be transferred by some agency on the same plant. It needs some agency. So genetically speaking, this is self-pollination because the pollen grain gets transferred to the stigma, which is having the same genetic constitution. But functionally speaking, it is a cross-pollination because it needs some agents to transfer the pollen grain from one flower to another flower of the same plant. And the best example is maize. So this is all about self-pollination, and it is different types. In the next part, we are going to talk about the cross-pollination and the different agents. Till then, stay blessed and God bless you.